Welcome back to Gript, everybody. You may have seen that Donald Trump could be impeached yet again by the Democratic Party in the States. Joining us to explain just why is the editor of hotair.com, Ed Morrissey. So, Ed, is it all hot air from the Democrats, or is this actually a threat to Trump's presidency?
Well, impeachment here is it's a tricky thing because we have two chambers in our legislature. We have the House of Representatives and we have the Senate. And the House of Representatives can impeach a president on a majority vote. And then the Senate has to take it up in terms of whether or not to remove the president who's been impeached. And that requires a 2/3 vote for removal in the Senate. So simply having a majority in the House would allow Democrats to impeach Donald Trump if they so choose, pretty much for anything that they'd like to impeach him for. The House sets its own rules in that regard, and so they've been working on this now all year long on varying different pretexts. And I think it got more serious yesterday when Nancy Pelosi, who had been resistant to the idea, sort of threw in with it. But then this morning, a release of the transcript of this call between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine doesn't really show any sort of a smoking gun in terms of a corrupt act. I think they're going to have a little bit more difficult time with it after this.
So even if this did pass in the House, the Senate would likely block it?
Almost certainly, and especially on this basis. There's no way that Republicans are going to vote to remove on the basis of this phone call. It wasn't a Donald Trump was calling it a perfect phone call. It wasn't that. There was some petty stuff going back there. He seemed a lot more focused on his own agenda than on the American agenda in Ukraine. But I mean, that's lots of presidents have done that sort of thing when talking with other world leaders too. It's not necessarily an issue. He didn't threaten to withhold aid. He didn't threaten to downgrade the relationship in exchange for some favor. That's really what the accusation was from this whistleblower. And that, at least on the basis of the transcript of this call, it simply just didn't happen. In fact, if you read the whole transcript, and it should be read in its entirety, it's clear that Zelensky was very friendly with Trump right from the beginning of this thing and was sort of ingratiating him, talking about how he's going to drain the swamp in Ukraine. And that's sort of what got Trump started talking about first CrowdStrike, which was something that happened with the so-called Russiagate investigation, and then Hunter Biden, which he brings up briefly.
So Trump did say he did encourage the Ukrainian leader to look into whatever financial ongoings had occurred between Biden, his son, and that Ukrainian company. Is that in itself encouraging a foreign president to investigate a rival candidate, an impeachable offense?
Well, again, they can kind of set whatever they want to set as impeachable offenses. I mean, that the House really makes that determination on its own in each individual case. The Constitution says high crimes and misdemeanors, so there should be something substantive, and there's a political price to pay if they impeach over silly items. No, I don't think it would normally rise to an impeachable offense. I also think that it's not necessarily a very laudable thing to be doing that sort of thing. But in the course of the conversation, if you read the entire transcript, Zelensky actually brings it up first. He brings up the previous prosecutor being fired and how they want to restart those investigations. And and he also brings up the fact that Rudy Giuliani had already been in the Ukraine, had met with one of Zelensky's deputies prior to the election, and that they want to have Giuliani come back out and continue those conversations. So that was Zelensky bringing the topic up first and then Trump responding to it.
So is this not just a massive gamble by Pelosi that's almost certainly going to backfire?
Well, it's certainly a massive gamble. Whether it backfires or not, I guess we'll see. It depends on how it's being reported, depends on how it's being spun. And I think it also depends, too, on what else this whistleblower might have heard or might have read. If it was this transcript that's the basis of this, I don't think it's going anywhere. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that the American public has been very skeptical about impeachment the entire time. There's a new poll out today that was a survey that was taken even after this Ukraine gate thing. That's what I'm calling it. And here in America, we slap gate onto some word, and that's how we signify a scandal, right? It comes from Watergate, 40 something years ago, 45 years ago. But so Watergate was actually the name of a hotel. It had nothing to do with a gate. But now we just slap gate on everything. Russia
It's
gate,
not that you want to
Ukraine gate.
slap your opponents against the gate or anything like that.
It's just a suffix now. Gate is just a suffix. Just means scandal. But Ukraine gate had already broken by the time they started doing the survey, and there's been no change in support for impeachment. It's still at 37%, and with I think it was 47% opposed. And since 66% of Democrats support it, you can understand where all the rest of the demographics in the country are on it. And there's very few people that actually support impeachment here. So moving forward with impeachment on this basis, I think is going to be a very dangerous political proposition for Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats.
And Ed, it seems as if Trump would benefit electorally probably if this failed. But in terms of his Democratic opponents, it's likely to be Warren, Biden, or Kamala Harris. Is there any chance that a stronger candidate would emerge from the shadows, maybe a Michelle Obama or someone like that?
No, Michelle Obama's not going to get in the race. I mean, I suppose if she did decide that she wanted to get in the race, the field might clear for her a bit. But Michelle Obama has, I take her at her word. She really doesn't like electoral politics and has no desire to participate in them. And I think if she did, she would have gotten in by now. And I don't think that I don't see that as a realistic possibility. I think it's either going to be Biden or Warren at this point. We've already seen several months of other candidates on stage and debates, and they're simply not moving the needle. Kamala Harris, by the way, has fallen way off the pace and doesn't show any sign that she is going to become suddenly a much stronger candidate. And so I think if this thing grinds on, the Ukraine gate thing grinds on, it might damage Biden quite a bit. It might produce Elizabeth Warren as a nominee. And that might help. That might help Donald Trump, because I think Biden is somebody who can connect more with voters in the what we call the Rust Belt, the suburbs, the exurbs, the rural areas, better than Warren can. Warren is her appeal is limited there, and that would tend to help Donald Trump. It's tough to say how this is going to play out, but I think if the House impeaches Donald Trump and it's widely perceived to be unfair, then yes, I think it's going to help Donald Trump. I also think it's really going to hurt Democrats in the House races next year.
And say, if all things being equal, if a recession is avoided and the economy remains stable up until November 2020, would you say it's a safe bet Trump is going to rally home?
Well, I would say those are the conditions that Trump needs in order to win a second term, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, but the economy is always the biggest factor. And if the economy is still going strong into September of next year, so for the next year or so, if it remains strong, if growth remains, and probably most importantly, if wages continue to grow in a strong fashion as they have over the last couple of years, then yeah, I think Donald Trump is in a better position to win re-election. I also think that if they try to impeach on this, and if they do impeach on this, it's going to backfire, and it's going to damage Democrats in the districts where they need to run up some of the totals in order to win a presidential election. So, but if the economy goes south, if we head into a recession, and that's a possibility with the trade war with China, then I don't think that the impeachment is going to matter much. I think people are going to get unhappy with Trump on the basis of the economy, and they'll make a change.
Well, Ed Morrissey, thank you very much for your thoughts and your time, and we hope to speak to you again.
Thank you very much. Good on me, Lamagat.
The vulture of it.